Hi friends, today we will discuss how to create web services using Spring Boot and consume, using Angular. So I have already created an application, as you can see here. I have created an application, to get the record from the TV. I'm using Angular and Spring Boot. Okay, and in database, I'm using Oracle. Okay, here I have created one table employee, and I have defined here two records. Ron, Avi, and address and mobile number. Okay, employee ID, employee name, address, and mobile number. So here I have created a controller. This is my controller, employee controller, and my bean class where I have defined, a table. And actually, I'm using annotation here. Okay, so like I have created, two methods. First one is to get all the records, get employee, all employee. Okay, and second one is to get employee based on ID. Okay, so then I am also producing a result in a JSON. So that's why I'm using this okay, and I have also created here custom exceptions, so I'll also tell something about that. Okay, first I'll show you. mm, I have also defined here some properties, like I'm using Hikari. Basically Hikari is used in connection pooling. Again, I'm not going to deep, okay, about Hikari. So I think you should go and search in Google. So I have defined here on database URL, username, password, and driver class name and dialect. Okay, and one thing, let me show you. Actually, I'm using MVC, complete MVC. MVC. This is my DAO class. Okay, here, right here, a query from employee in where employee ID and whatever the ID is provided. Okay, if you're using here, and from here it's returning result, and in controller, what I'm doing now, if there is any exceptions is coming. Okay, and I can also put it outside of this catch block. Actually I have to only to check is employee wins is null or not. That means if there is no record available in the database, okay, then I have to show our custom message to the client. Okay, whatever the client is, client has a requirement. On the basis of that, we can provide here a message like I have just provide here no report found with ID. Okay. Actually, it's why it's coming in exception. Why I put here just because of this logic. Because whenever there will not be any records in a DB, if I'm calling a get method, then it will throw an exception. Okay, so I wrote here. Okay, okay, and let me show you something about this exception. My exception class. Okay, I extend here runtime exception. I I'm not extends just exception because I have to show error exception at a runtime. Okay, not at a compile. I also created one more class API error where I have defined status HTTP status, and I'm using a JSON format. Why I'm using in Spring Boot. Spring Boot also a written error message, okay, and properly formatted, okay, but when you will get it, then uh, date will returns in a string, not in a formatted way. That's why I used here JSON format. Okay, and here I defined the format in which I want to show when we get this error, at what time we get this error, date, month, year, hour, minute, and second. Okay, I use here local date time message, whatever the message we want to show there. and debug message and API sub errors. I'm not telling you something about this because in my um, scenario, I'm not, like, setting anything API sub errors. And debug message, this is something about, let me tell you, this is something about, and whenever you get an exception like database connection error and some SQL exceptions, in that case, you get a message, okay, and a command prompt also. That's why I use this. Okay, this one I use to show the custom exception message. Whatever the message client wants, we will set here. Okay, and I created here REST exception handler. Okay, see, when we have to create a custom exception, at that time we should, create a one class that extends response entity exception handler. And we do here, we used at the rate controller advice, okay, and used at the rate exception handler, before the method. Okay, I can also use this annotation in my controller also. Okay, but what is the difference when I will use here? This will not be applicable to other controller also. So to make our custom exception globally, then we should create an separate class where we have to define controller advice and then use a exception handler. Okay, what kind of exception we want to show, we want to raise, then we have to define here. Like I created a resource not found exception, then that's why I defined here resource not found exception. I created a method handle entity exceptions. Here I define resource not found exception. In API error, so I created some, constructor. uh, this is when the one argument. Here I define HTTP status. Here I define, HTTP status and I just set everything here. No, no, see, that's I also told you. Get localized message, what it will throw. Like our application, whatever the message will throw at the when exception will come. Okay, and and this one I told you, this will be our custom exception message. Whatever the client is requirement will be defined by us, not, okay, not raised by our application. So here, whatever the message I set here, here I use only message. Okay, in controller I show you, here I defined a message no record found with ID. Okay, and I also created one more method, build response entity. Okay, I think you must have a little bit idea about Spring Boot. Spring Boot, why we use, we can also use in a Spring. The I think so. The best thing to use is Spring Boot. We don't need to define uh, anything, something like that. You have to define uh, resource. To handle the resource, how to handle the resource, like a resource view resolver also. I'm talking about the resources, like, we you have to define your properties, where is your properties, everything you should have to define in an XML file. Okay, like you have to define a data source also there. Okay, session factory also. So you don't need to define anything there. Okay, you don't need to create any XML file. Okay, you just have to define everything here. Okay, let me run this. I have already run this application. Let me show you. uh, this is my postman. First I'll show you get employee. Okay, which method will call here? This one, get all employee. Okay, here I define here ID. Okay, whatever the ID we will provide, okay, on the basis of that we will fetch the record from the database. Okay, if there will not be any record will available, as I told you, uh, I know I should not try to code like this, to get first record even without checking it's null or not. Okay, I just wanted to throw custom exception, so I wrote that. Okay, and if there will not be any record available, then my control will come here, and this will throw an exception, no record found with ID test. So, because there are only two records for one and two ID, not for three. Okay, so let's see what I said there. No record found with ID. Okay, and this is our ID. Okay, status not found, and as I told you, I set here timestamp in format dt mm by and time hour minute and second. Okay, it's clear. And photo, you'll get the record here, abhi Delhi mobile number in this. If you want to fetch all the records, then you have to just remove whatever the parameter you are passing here, hit this URL only, and you will get the record. Okay, here two objects are coming. Now I'll show you how we will call this API from Angular. Before going into Angular code, let me show something here. I'm using here at the rate cross origin. Okay, I defined here URL. Okay, and localhost 4200, the port on which my Angular application will run. Okay, if I'm defining here 4200, okay, application running in this port. Apart from this port, is application in running, suppose application is running in other port, then this will not allow to get the resource. Okay, it's provide a restrictions. So I'm using a cross origin, uh, okay, and to get the record. So let me show you. First thing, we have to create a service class. Okay, like I have created an employee service class, and to call the API. Okay, if we need HTTP class also, we have to use a at the rate injectable. Okay, why we need of this? Because this class has a dependency of HTTP. If we don't have a dependency, then we don't need to use at the rate injectable. Okay, so we are defining inside a constructor. Okay, and now I create a one more method, get employee. Okay, like I'm not telling something about this observable, and I employee. Okay, and let me something about this I employee. I have created an interface I employee where I define all the properties like employee ID, employee name, address, and mobile number. I think all these properties are in TV. Employee ID, employee name, address, and mobile number. Also, I define inside a bean all these are employee ID, employee name, and mobile number. Okay, I created here an interface with all these properties. Okay, and now I call this. I this method will return um, observable of I employee type array. Okay, now I call http dot get method where I defined URL URL on which our application is on which our API is running. So I defined here get employee slash Okay, that means it will return the result of only this result will return, record will return. Okay, and then I call a map method to use a map method. We have to import map operator. Okay, and to use the HTTP also we need to import HTTP class. Okay, and observable also need to be import and response. Let me show you. When you will click on a on a map, then you can see here it returns an observable type of response. Okay, that's why I'm using an observable here. Okay, and because it accept response, you can see here response. Okay, that's why I'm defining here response, and I'm using arrow type function. Okay, and I'm calling a JSON method. It's returning an I employee. Okay, uh, basically array of I employee. This is about the service class. Basically why we create a service class. Basically in Java application you can see we used to create a utility class. Okay, and suppose we have to write a common logic at one place. Okay, and I want if I'm defining any code at one place that is common, we can use in other class also. We don't need to redefine that. Okay, so then I create here employee app component. Sorry, employee list. Okay, this class. Here I define here uh, our interface. Okay, this is an array. Okay, here I'm using employee service class. So H, you can see here I'm defining inside a constructor. Okay, and to use this employee service we have to import it. Okay, and also we need to import iEmployee interface also. Here I'm using an ng on it method. Okay, and here I'm not going into deep when this will call. I think so this will call after the constructor call. Okay, and so this dot employee service dot get, we will call a get employee method of this class employee service. Then we will call a subscribe method. Actually to know something about more something about an observable. So you have to go through with Google. Okay, I think whatever the response will come from observable, we have to subscribe that. That's why we're using a subscribe here. Okay, and you can see here in this method it will accept we will define here a callback method. Okay, Uh, I think you know something about the callback method that is defined inside a method. Okay, and that will execute when some events will occur. So here I'm using arrow function. Okay, and assign this data into this array, I employee array. Okay, when we call a subscribe method, then it will get the record that it will get a record from observable. Okay, something let me tell you something about like I also create one more HTML file. Okay, here I'm using ng4. Okay, directives. So here is the for each loop. Here we use the let keyword. Okay, el of employees are array. Okay, and if we will call employee id, employee name, address, and mobile number. Okay, this is in table. I'm also using in a bootstrap. That's why I'm designing like this. Okay, now I'm telling you something about this. I'm also using routing. Okay, so you can see here I import here HTTP module. To use HTTP class, we need also to import HTTP module here. Okay, to use the routes, we need to use the routes router module. Whatever the class is imported, we have to declare here, like employee list component class here. Okay, and browser module, HTTP module, and router module. To use the router, we have to call the for root method. Here I'm using array. So yeah, how we define array, like constant variable name, constant name. In routes, here we define our component. In app component HTML, here you can see I'm using an app apps, and router link, whatever we defined here. Yeah, path name. Okay, and let me run this application. We have to also define here router outlet also. First, let me show you this application is running on 4401. Okay, so we are not getting any record here. Okay, you can see here this one is a tab. Let's check here what's, as you can see here, from this origin has been blocked by course policy. Okay, no access control allow origin. As I told you, we can access this resource only when application is running on this port 4200. Okay, so let's change it. Okay, as you can see here, application is running on 4200 now. So let me run from here. 4200. Okay, when I will click on this employee detail, this will take some time to load. Oh, you can see all reports are coming. Okay, why this was not working? Let me show you. As you know, initially I defined here like get employee slash two. So we only wants to fetch the record with ID 2 here. Only I'm here returning I employee, array of type I employee. So we are returning array, but what we are returning from here, response entity of type employee win only. So, okay, I have to make some changes here. Not, I'll do it for you. Now I think this will work. Okay, you can see here we are getting the record of employee ID 2. Okay, if I make change here like 1, then we will get the record of employee ID 1. Okay, let me show you employee ID 1. What is the record against employee ID 1? 1 Rohan Kota. Here 1 Rohan Kota. Okay, in next video I will tell you, you know, how we create a web services when are with multiple, configuration file. Here, as you can see here, only one config file, employee dot application dot properties, sorry, application dot properties file. Okay, and in an application, uh, I would say in big applications. Okay, like in enterprise applications, there could be multiple properties file. Okay, and I'll show you how to handle those external properties file. Okay, if you like this video, please don't forget to share and subscribe. Thanks for your watch.